it was really this idea that came up from this legislation and legislation that is basically attacking on wholesaling. If you have been reading some of just in the last year or so and seen some of the new laws changing, especially in South Carolina, even here in Oklahoma, Nebraska, things coming up in Pennsylvania right now. There's a lot of attacks right now, Matt, on wholesaling, and wholesaling's been great. It gets a bad rap sometimes, especially from the people that drive around the Lamborghinis and throw hundreds in the air, and basically, that's kind of a bad, it doesn't really give you a good look. Might make you feel cool, but doesn't give that industry a good look at all. Kind of makes you feel like you're taking advantage of people and all that stuff. And so, there's good wholesalers and then there's bad wholesalers, right? There's good car salesmen and then there's bad car salesmen. Unfortunately, right now, everybody's thrown into the baby with the bathwater. And NAR right now, the National Association of Realtors, they don't like wholesaling. In fact, they want to be able to regulate it. And why do you think that is? One, because they just lost a huge, they had a lawsuit and they lost to the tune of almost $400 million, on basically losing out on commissions and everything else that's coming with the ability to be able to make them have more money by being a realtor, right? And so they want you to be a licensed agent, and then they also really want you to own the property before you market it. We don't do that. Why? Because we're not really taught to do that, and rightly so. Wholesaling's been cool that you can basically go put a contract on a property, even if you quote didn't have the money to buy the property because you had no intention necessarily of buying it yourself. You had intention of selling it to somebody else. Now, technically, to put a property under contract, you should have the ability and resources to be able to close on that property yourself, right? Putting the money in earnest money at the title, making sure that you're doing right with that seller. But a lot of people, they don't really do that, and they just look for that end wholesaler, the end buyer, so they can put that property under contract, for example, for $120,000, and they got somebody else that's going to buy it for $150,000, and now they're going to be the middleman, right? We call it the A to B, putting it under contract for $100,000. The middleman, right? B in the middle, you are the wholesaler, and then the B to C side, you're selling it to your wholesaler, and you're making the $30,000 in between. Well, that's been great. However, with legislation and attack on wholesaling, it's now not possible in some states, right? And it's becoming harder and harder, what we call copy legislation, that we think is going to happen with these states that are regulating and quote outlawing wholesaling. In Oregon right now, if you're caught wholesaling and doing it quote the wrong way, you actually can serve prison time. Now, this isn't meant to scare you. It's just meant to be aware of what's going on right now. And so we wanted to create a solution that would allow wholesalers, Matt, to be able to actually take down properties. When we say take down, we mean buy the property, close on the property. Now, here's the next question. Well, Cory, I just got involved with wholesaling. I don't have in that example, I just said $120,000 in my bank account to go buy that property. How am I going to go buy that property? Well, one, you can either borrow the money, right? You can do hard money with Chris or somebody else, right? You can borrow it from a friend, hard money, private lender, right? But there hasn't really been, and a lot of times Chris is going to ask you questions like putting down 15, 20%. He may ask how much experience that you had. You might have to show some taxes sometime, depending on who you're working with and what lender you're working with. There's all these kind of regulations all these like stipulations that people put into play. And there hasn't really been a funding source that we're aware of that wants to be your wholesaling partner. Not only do we want to loan you the money if the deal makes sense, we're going to go through that here in just a second, Matt, so you can see it. So follow me here. So we are now offering money. We have upwards right now of nearly $80 million available to be able to fund on these properties that you don't own, right? But you got a good deal on. You're a wholesaler, so you're great at negotiating it, but you may not have all the money. And if you're in a state like South Carolina right now, they're not allowing you to market the property unless you own it. They don't want you to go market that property unless you own it. They're putting that as the wholesaling category. And then on top of that, they also want to make sure that you're a licensed agent. If you don't own the property, you have to be licensed. So it's like a double whammy. So we created this thing called takedown funding. And what is takedown funding? Takedown funding is where you can apply for funds on a deal that you get. And we're only going to basically charge you as, quote, little that we can to make sure you got a little bit of skin in the game, but very, very, very minimal, because we're going to partner with you as a wholesaling partner if we know that this deal makes sense, right? So there's an admin fee of $1,250. There's an inspection fee of $350. Not that that shouldn't kill you there. 90 days of insurance. That's not going to be a whole lot of money. Most of our deals are under $250,000. Sometimes they go up over 300 or 400,000. Most of them are under that in terms of the dollar. So you're talking about maybe $500, $600, $700 there. And then 1 point every 30 days. That is your accountability, because in wholesaling, what do we call it? We call it hot potato. Why is it hot potato? Because the day that you put it under contract, Matt, that's the day that the clock starts ticking, doesn't it? Right? On the day that you put it under contract to the day that you got to close, the clock starts ticking. We call it hot potato. So every 30 days that you have that property, it's going to be a point that is going to be your accountability, basically your fee. And then at the end, check this out. We profit split with you 80-20. You get 80%. We only get 20%. We got to make sure it's a 4,000 minimum, because obviously at the end of the day, we got to make sure the risk analysis is there for you and for us. We certainly don't want you to be set up to fail. And what that kind of looks like is an example here. But let's just say we have a $200,000 deal. That's your A to B buy price, right? $1,250 admin fee, $350 inspection fee. And then you maybe have about $2,000 in what we call closing costs. Where does that number come up with? It's about 1%. It can be give or take 1.5 or maybe 2.5. Most of the time it's around that 1% number. And then insurance on this $200,000 deal is probably going to be about $400, right? So at the end of the day, right, the total wholesaler cost that you have to get a $200,000 house. And imagine this, you're a brand new wholesaler, maybe you've been doing it for a while. All you got to do, if you don't have necessarily the cash, the credit, the ability, or whatever it is, the resources to be able to take down this deal, and you're at a situation where you got to either buy this thing or you're going to lose it, right? And there's a lot of people are in that situation. Or maybe you're just in a state that just won't allow you to, quote, legally market it unless you actually own the property, right? It's only going to cost you $4,000 to buy a $200,000 house. Now, check this out. On the back end, let's say that you end up selling that property for $240,000. Now you're saying, I can hear what you're saying right now. Wait a minute, that's $40,000, Cory. That's a big spread. That's because you're thinking of just selling it to cash buyers. Here's what's cool about doing this. Whenever we take this deal down, you get to throw it on the MLS. You can put it on the MLS. You can show it at any time. It's great. You have a lot bigger buyer pool and the buyers pay more money. So on a $40,000 spread on this particular house is probably not out of the norm at all, believe it or not. Let's say it takes you 60 days to find a buyer, Matt. Most of our wholesalers find them within under 60 days. So now you got 4,800 in points. Why is that? Because you got a point every single month, right? So now you got 4,800 in points. And then what? 1,200 on your closing costs. And then likely there's some commissions at the end. And why am I saying 4%? Because you might have to negotiate and say, hey, you get 1, you get 3, you get 2, you get 2. But here's what's really cool. What if you're an agent? If you're an agent, then those fees just can come back to you or somebody on your team. If you're a broker and you have somebody on your team, maybe you cut a deal with that agent, those fees can come back to you. So I want you to remember that, because we don't care where the commissions go. We just got to make sure that because we have the property and we took down the property and now, quote, the owner of the property, we got to have an agent represent that property, right? And so those commissions, Matt, they can go to whoever that agent is, whether it's the person we're working with or somebody on their team. So let's say the gross profit on this deal is 40K, right? You follow me so far? Don't lose this. 40K now. The profit splits on an 80-20. Remember, it's a 4,000 minimum. So the profit's going to be 40K. There's 4,800 in points. There's 9,600 in commissions. Now remember, some of that or all of that could potentially go back to you. But in this case, I'm just showing it as another expense. $1,200 in closing costs. That equals $24,400. And then what you're going to look at as a resale partner net split, check this out. We would get 4,880. You guys get $19,520. Now, you had no money. just that 4 grand that you put into it, you made 20 grand, right? Are you okay with giving up basically 5 grand on this? Hopefully you are. And if you have the commissions obviously there, then you're even going to get more money. So this is just kind of a basic example, but this is really powerful because if you don't have the ability to go find those funds, we will give them to you. We've got to make sure that the deal makes sense. Now, don't bring us a deal that's 90 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar. Like that's kind of okay deals. You want to be able to bring us deals in that 60 range. And typically we really want to target around that 60% LTV. That's really going to protect you. So you're not going to be set up to fail. It's really going to help us as well because we're lending you basically 100% on this deal besides you putting in the money for the closing costs. And you don't have to worry about if you've done a deal ever before. This could be your first deal, Matt. You don't have to, we're not going to ask you for your taxes. We're not asking for 20% down. We're not asking for, all these other pieces that come into play, at the end of the day, in terms of going against the loan. All we're basically asking for is for you to be committed to getting this deal done. And we actually make more the more that you make as well.
So, Cory said 4 points, but he's just out 4 months. Let's just say you buy it today and you throw it up and you get a cash offer with a 2-week close or a 3-week close. It's basically 12% interest. I'm the hard money lender side, right? If it's 12% interest, like standard interest on the loan, it's just 1 point a month. What 12% interest divided by 12 months is 1 point a loan. It's not 4 points if you close it in 21 days. It's just 1 point. So to clarify that, it's not 4 points. It's 1 point a month, which is your standard 12% interest on any hard money loan that you would get from most hard money lenders. So there's a little clarification on that.
Good point.
Perfect. Now, is there anything, Cory, is there anything else you wanted to tackle before I go through and answer questions or ask some questions here?
No, I think I went through everything, at least enough to kind of wet the whistle of if there's some interest involved here. Again, this is for someone that's either never done a deal before and they just need some cash, but they don't have necessarily the experience. They certainly can't show you their taxes that basically, equate to this being justified. So we're able to come here and be a wholesale partner, a wholesale lending partner, if you will, and allow you to make 80%. We take 20%. And we want to do a lot of deals with the person that's committed to working hard and working these deals.
Yeah, just I'm a true hard money lender. So I'm looking at the asset. Now I'm still going to require like that 15 to 20% down, or you could go to like a soft money lender, like say a Kiavi, where they want the tax returns and they want the 3 last deals and they need all that stuff. We're just trying to fill that gap for somebody that's either new to the market and they don't have any cash for any of those things or experience or anything. They can but they get a good deal. They're on DealMachine, they're dialing for dollars, and now they got a deal and they don't have any of the other assets that we just talked about, and they can bring it to us and we can, now all of a sudden it's a $40,000 deal and here's a $20,000 check.
Awesome. We're just to clarify, so a couple of clarification questions. Where did you say you guys partner? Like what states and whatnot?
So we will do it all over the country right now. We're only marketing in a few states just because there's more demand in those states. South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Oklahoma, obviously Arizona, where Chris is. And so those are the states that we're, putting most of the emphasis on right now for marketing wise. But if you've got an outstanding deal somewhere and, you know that this is a great deal, we will happily underwrite it for you. We make it super simple. If you go to takedownfunding.com, really simple, at the very corner, it just says apply for funds, and we will underwrite that deal. We usually get back to you within 24 hours, as long as it's usually before the weekend. There may be some delay there, but we usually get back to you very quickly and letting you know whether or not that deal can be accepted or not accepted. We also usually give you a reason why if we don't accept it. It's something that we'll look at kind of everywhere, but those are the states, the primary states right now that we're focused on. Matt, is Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Arizona, I think that's
We're also jumping into Oregon because the January 1st deadline we have on that. We have a big
Oregon's another big one. Yeah. That's one that a lot of people need help in right now because they're scared. Like, there's prison time involved. So they don't want that.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Machine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.